Let's welcome in NFL insider Josina Anderson to talk about the Jets, Mike White, and all things NFL. Latest with the rib injury, because those Jets fans would like to see him back this Sunday.
Yeah, so we saw, what happened to Mike White, which was really unfortunate because even though that Jets team, which by all accounts is still outperforming many people's expectations, entering that game 7-5, though still starting that game off with 5 straight punts. Going into halftime down 7-0 and then being able to tie that, Mike White gets hit when they're down 14-7 after the halftime break, and obviously incurs that rib injury that you were talking about after he gets hit by Matt Milano. Now, all the scans after the game, at least the immediate ones, show that there were no broken bones as far as the initial review on the x-rays, and he was sent to the hospital locally, as Robert Saleh said, for precautionary reviews. But the question is, do any subsequent scans show anything else once swelling has an opportunity to recede? And even beyond that, whether it's clear or not, the question is, what is his pain threshold? So I think what's really interesting about this Jets team is not only somewhat of the optimism still surrounding this team besides the loss, all of the praise that Mike White incurred for coming back in that game, again, despite the loss, showing his firm grasp on that locker room. But after that is these quarterback questions that still remain, because if he has some sort of pain that is intolerable as the week progresses, can he manage a full 4 quarters coming up against that surging Lions team that you mentioned? And even beyond that, is who should be QB2? We saw what happened to Joe Flacco after he comes in an immediate relief after Mike White gets hurt, gets the fumble after he's hit by Greg Rousseau, doesn't do much that inspires the team. And matter of fact, with the way that he was playing and the way that fans and people were talking about Joe Flacco on social media, it gave me shades of 2019 when he played in his second to last game for the Denver Broncos, and he proceeds to get pummeled by the Kansas City Chiefs for 8 sacks and didn't look like he wanted to be there. Some people on social media were saying that yesterday. So what I'm trying to encompass for you guys here is that it's a very interesting question, not only regards to how Mike White is feeling for the New York Jets, but also who should be QB2. And if Joe Flacco is not inspiring that confidence, particularly in a very crucial game for the Jets and their playoff hopes, with Mike Saleh basically almost ensuring that he feels like this team is going to get to the playoffs, should Zach Wilson then come up to be QB2 when we know that Robert Saleh basically said for sure Mike White is the starter, pending, his pain tolerance and nothing else coming up on those scans later?
We saw the Lions as a favorite over the Vikings right now. That game with the Jets is a pick'em. All right, so the Jets have the longest playoff drought in the NFL. The Giants are not far behind them. They have not made an appearance since 2016. They had a very ugly loss to the Eagles yesterday on Sunday. Saquon Barkley dealing with a neck injury. He called it a stinger, happened at practice. He says he wasn't limited in this game, but what can you tell us about what's going on with him and the Giants?
Well, the whole thing with Saquon Barkley and the incurring of the neck injury going into that game was just curious to begin with, right? So on Thursday, he talks to the press. There's no mention of the neck injury. And then afterwards, he surfaces on the injury report. On Friday, Brian Daboll doesn't give any clear explanation as to when the injury surfaced. But after the game, Saquon said that it happened in practice. But throughout the duration of the game is where it kind of became a little bit more curious, because even though Saquon said after the game that it really didn't factor in his utilization, the way the game unfolded, I guess I would say, surface more questions. For the first 3 possessions, when they get down 21-0, Saquon Barkley has just 1 carry and 1 pass. So the question is, if it didn't impact you during the game, why is the utilization so sparse in a game that you pretty much need to have to keep your postseason hopes going? Now, even though, yes, they're playing the Commanders this weekend for the tiebreaker and drop to 7 temporarily and potentially could leap back into 6. So maybe there's some sort of calculation with respect to, holding him back, particularly after they fell down 34-14 and he didn't have any utilization after that. So if you're making, as Brian Daboll, you're making that calculation, okay, well, even if we don't use him so much and we're being cautious, we can still have some sort of playoff hopes here. To me, it just didn't make sense. And sometimes that happens, even though he's saying he's fine. Obviously, he was agreeing for the game before being questionable entering the game. Sometimes when you go into the game and it feels kind of iffy, or the team is expressing some sort of caution with the utilization, I felt it had an impact on the game. It might have been wiser, and this is just my opinion from someone watching the game, someone who's covered the NFL for 20 years, that if you go into that game with Daniel Jones, knowing that he has to utilize his legs more, or Matt Breida goes into that game more, knowing that he is going to be the bona fide starter, maybe you have a different outcome. But now once you fall, you're back 21-0, and now you're calling on Saquon, hey, let's go to you for 5 straight touches in the ensuing possession, or you come out of the break, and on the first possession out of the break, it's like, hey, we need you, for 3 straight touches there. You've already fallen back too much, and now you find yourself in this position where you have to win this game against the Cowboys, or you're going to go into more of a kind of a quagmire with the Seahawks and the Lions and the likes of those teams fighting at the bottom tier of the NFC picture. So to me, it was just a little bit confounding how they ended up using him, and I feel like they should have had more certainty with either he is good to go and he's full go, or you're resting him and he's not as good to go, and maybe we have a different plan that's more potent.
Josina, as you mentioned, a crucial game for them against the Commanders. Commanders have the 6th seed right now in the NFC. Giants, that last 7th seed final playoff spot right now. Commanders are favored by 4.5 on Sunday. Let's talk about the Eagles. You were at that Eagles-Giants game. They become the first team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot, now sitting at 12-1. After the game, you caught up with Brandon Graham, had a career high, matched a career high, I should say, 3 sacks in that game. Here's part of your interview.
You're in New York. Look at that crowd right over there. They're screaming MVP. What does it feel like to hear that on the road with the way this team is playing?
Well, you know what? It's always good because you know how people were feeling about Jalen early on, but now Jalen silenced all that. But don't buy into it. We ain't done nothing yet. We ain't got a ring yet. We got to finish this thing. And so it's good that we doing what we said we wanted to do, but now we just got to keep working, making sure we stay on point.
You see the steam coming off his head there. It looked cold, Joe. I mean, you were there. You're seeing this energy from him, from this Eagles team. Your biggest takeaway, and just kind of their mentality, how focused they are right now on their mission.
Their vibe is just sublime. To witness them from pregame, throughout the game, complimentary football, getting scores from Jalen in the air, on the ground, to the defense getting 7 sacks, on Daniel Jones. Just all around, everything is together. And not only that, just watching how Jalen Hurts comport himself in the press conference after the game. You can see the maturation with wanting to project this business persona, with not getting too high, not getting too low, growing into his skin as a quarterback and a bona fide MVP candidate in the NFL right now. You see that growth, and even A.J. Brown was making fun of him in the locker room with me after the game. He's like, he's trying to be always serious right now and what have you, but he likes the fact that he can see the evolution even in their relationship, because despite the fact that they're pretty much BFFs on the team right now, I think that was evident in these interviews that I've had with him throughout the season. He told me that he likes the fact that Jalen Hurts can still correct him on the sideline. They can still have that communication and still remain focused throughout the game. And I thought that when it was clear that the Eagles secondary compared to the Giants wide receivers was a bona fide outmatching in this game, with the combination of Darius Slay and James Bradbury going against Slayton and Richie James. And not to say that they aren't, NFL certified wide receivers in their own right, but from an elite standpoint, we know what that matchup is. I like the just the professionalism that they displayed after the game in terms of, qualifying them as having to make sure that despite no matter what the jersey name is on the back of the jersey or what have you, that they still have to come to those matchups with respect or what have you. So very interesting to be in the locker room after the game. You feel that vibe. Not only is it businesslike, but at the same time, you feel like this ease in the locker room, this relaxation, taking it seriously, but not taking it too seriously. And as someone who's been in NFL locker rooms for 20 years or what have you, this is the energy that you feel around teams that go far in the postseason, despite the fact that Darius Slay was not too happy to see that the Cowboys did squeak it out against the Texans in the final seconds there.
Hey, Texans have that #1 spot in the draft right now. Their vibe is sublime. I love that. All right, vibe is sublime when it comes to the Eagles. There is not a vibe anymore when it comes to the Broncos. Eliminated from the playoffs, lost to the Chiefs, their 10th loss of the season. Russell Wilson leaves in concussion protocol. Things look bad there. What is next for this Broncos team? This season was a complete bust for them.
Well, I would say for the last several weeks, just from league sources, and I'm constantly staying in contact with people throughout the day, every week during the NFL season and the off season, that what you're hearing is the understanding is that the members of the Broncos brass are not only under review, but understand that they are under review, particularly after this early exit from the Broncos. This is not the expectation that they wanted when you have a new ownership team coming in and giving the likes of a Russell Wilson a 5-year, $245 million deal, making him the second highest paid quarterback in terms of average per year behind Aaron Rodgers, and getting that deal done September before the season started. And to have this type of result is not what people were looking for. And for them to have the worst scoring offense in the Super Bowl era is not also what the Denver Broncos are looking for. So when you're talking about the general manager and the head coach, right now they are in an unfortunate position, at least as far as my understanding, of being not only under review, but understanding that they are under review. And we will see what happens with their job statuses as we get closer to this coaching carousel towards the end of December. But when you look at the structure of Russell Wilson's contract right now, he got that extension with 2 years already remaining on his existing contract, and that guaranteed money runs through 2024. So not much room that you can do there. And you understand the holding on to Nathaniel Hackett, not only because what else are you going to do in the middle of the season that was really going to put an end to that conundrum that's going on in Colorado, but also serve somewhat as a PR shield for Russell Wilson throughout the duration of the season. But that pretty much is over. When I was talking to a source in the middle of the season, he said, the Denver Broncos are not typically a team, at least in their storied history, to make moves until the end of the season. That's what I would expect now, because it's pretty much already over. But look towards the end of the offseason to see if they make not only one move, but potentially two.
Josina Anderson, we appreciate it. Glad you're home and warm now. Have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you very soon. That is our Josina Anderson NFL Insider. Inside the NFL, exclusively on Paramount Plus. Check out a new episode tomorrow night, every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern. Reaction to what they learned during Week 14. Also, those great interviews and mic'd up players and coaches.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.